Welcome to the Foray Music Podcast. I'm Charlie.
I'm Alexandria.
And I'm Amy.
On this week's pod, what the Suzuki method really taught, Esperanza Spalding leaves Harvard, Nate Chinen enters the chat RE Jazz Standards, new music, and more.
First off, what's new? What's on your mind? I just asked myself that question, Alex.
Tell us, Alex.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. Yeah. My quandary for this week is how young people function in an institution. Young people meaning, um, I don't know if we know this, but I work with Professor Dr. Charlie Christenson. We work at Berklee College of Music. And I am, in fact, a young person, and I am, in fact, teaching other young people. And if you're watching this, you'll see that I look 12.
Stop that.
So it's a challenge to kind of command respect from 18-year-old boys. So I've been
See, but
really,
that's more about them.
yeah,
Anyway,
but it's
sorry.
also about, I think,
Defense
like,
mode.
I'm thinking about like how when I've been thinking about this, I'm like, oh, how are women perceived for them? Like their most, for some of them, their most immediate interaction with women is their mother. And like boys and moms, I think have this like special relationship. I think it's different from guys and their fathers, but I think sometimes they see you and they see that instead of like an authority figure of some sort, like that can really command the space and all of these things. And they think because also I'm young and I kind of acted and I'm sort of chill, they kind of think that they can do whatever they want to do and there aren't any consequences. So, and this generation is just weird. Like I don't think they really I'm hearing it from all types of like I have a couple friends who are kindergarten teachers, like all the way up to college. That there's like there's the line between like authority figure and like friend is like blurred for them, so they can like they feel like they can just do whatever. So I've been trying to think of ways to like not be mean, but at the same time be like, hey, like I know I look like this and I know I'm young, but like I'm still here to teach y'all, and there still needs to be like a semblance of respect of my time and yours. So yeah, that's been on my mind.
What seems to be kind of like working for you more often than not, or what's not working, or when it comes to kind of like trying to manage that? There's classroom
Yeah,
management.
yeah. Well, what I've been actually having a time like a hard time with is people showing up late to class. So now I lock the door after 15 minutes.
Nice.
And so they just can't like come into class, and then it's an unexcused absence. And it I feel like that's just like a hard line. Like if I doing that actually got them to respect me more because they're like, oh, we can't just like show up and do whatever and lollygag, and it's we're here to have fun, but there's also like this is a class we're supposed to learn and all these things. So that I've been doing that. What not to do, I used to think like, oh, okay, it's cool if I don't like chew them out or whatever. But I've learned how to like chew them out in a like playful manner. Like, I know you didn't mean to come like 45 minutes late to class, right? Like, you would never do that. Oh my gosh. Things like that. Like,
Yeah.
I love that.
just making them, oh, and then they're like, oh, I'm so sorry, blah, blah, blah. I was like, oh yeah, just like I don't want to do this. Do you want to do this? Like, let's not do this. So just like let's not have that happen again. Right? Yeah. I think that's cool.
Good for you. That makes me so mad. I'm so upset though. I'm so offended
No, I
that
just think,
people
yeah.
no, but that people would have the audacity to be like, I can't really learn from this person. Or whatever
Yeah.
that maybe that's not I don't understand the attitude. I'm because so confused. I
I
feel
just
like the only times
yeah,
I've been kind of like immature in a class are when after I've felt like, okay, I really like this is not going well in one of like those like UM lectures where it's like not in the music school. I didn't have this experience in the music school, but like a TA, but it's like nothing's really going down. But clearly things are going down.
yeah,
So I'm like, what is their issue? I want to ask them, like,
me
why,
too.
what,
I
what's the
think I think
deal?
it's because I look young and they know I'm young and I'm a woman and I'm
But why
short.
can't we learn from young people, women? So women are just supposed to be mothers. You learn so much from your mother too. So it's like, what?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I these are the questions I ask myself.
Well, I want that as my ringtone too.
You say that about everything. Yeah, I don't know. This is a big topic. I do think that my 2 cents on this is that um, I do think that there's just, yeah, I think there's like a lot of uh, bullshit. Like there's a lot of disrespect that's like misogynistic and that's like ageist or whatever that is. That is just like um, that's coming from like there's some people that are just jerks, and
Yeah,
they just can't, or they won't, or they can't process that, like that, the truth of this situation or something. I think though that is like a whole, there's like a whole menu of reasons why people are like like seemingly disrespectful or assholes in class or whatever that is, like there's just like such like a, as many people as there are, there's potential like or like there's potential um causes for like that kind of behavior, or just
right.
behavior that kind of seems disrespectful. And sometimes it's like, for me, sometimes when I feel that way, it's really, like Amy said, it's like, oh, it's like their thing, like it's kind of their problem that they're acting out or
Definitely.
experiencing. I think that that's true, but also it's like I've realized that sometimes it's like my problem or
Mm,
something, or that I'm perceiving something as
Mm,
like a disrespectful thing, or I'm jumping to a conclusion of like why they are acting the way
gotcha.
they are. You
that's
know what I mean?
fair. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, I was a young teacher once. I will never again be a young teacher, but I was once like, I started teaching college when I was 26, and
Oh,
like I had a lot of that stuff in my head where like, oh, this person is acting this way because I'm kind of young, or like I kind of look like them a little bit, and I like would dress up a lot. Like I wore like suits and ties and stuff to school just to kind
Oh,
of like try to like
yeah.
separate myself a little bit.
yeah.
Um, which like all of that, the psychology of like what we wear when we're teaching and everything is like a whole other book or something about all that kind of stuff. Because I actually was just reading an article
Absolutely.
about like how like someone actually kind of advocating for kind of like dressing more casual when you're teaching so that like students feel more comfortable with you.
Mm,
There's all this like push and pull where it's kind of like there's one side of this
Yeah.
thing being like we want to pull down these barriers so that students feel like comfortable in these scenarios to just kind of like mess up and do crazy things and all that kind of stuff and not feel like they're like in jail. And then there's the other side of it where it's like um no, like students are garbage, like they need to learn how to manage themselves and their
mm,
time and all of that kind of stuff. Um like I think like both of those kind of general like directions or like origins of arguments kind of like make sense to me a little bit logically. And so I don't know, I do a lot of kind of like searching, and it's kind of an adjustment every term or every semester. A lot of the
yeah.
conventional wisdom is like you start more strict and then you can get more chill, but it's hard to start chill and become strict
Yeah.
because then you're not strict, you're just mean. It's like not who you
Right.
are, you're just being mean. Like you decided that you are mad at them or you hate them or whatever that is.
That's
Um,
true. Yeah, I'm trying to be easier on myself. Like it's my first semester
You're
and
definitely
I
teaching them stuff
just
too.
yeah, and
Like you're
like
definitely teaching them stuff.
I
They're
hope
coming
so.
away with stuff. I know that.
But no, that makes a lot. Yeah, I've been thinking about like what I wear, how language that I use to help them ensure that like they're comfortable, things of that nature. I think, and it's weird that that it's not discussed. This is a whole different topic, but like it's not like as a performance major, we don't talk about pedagogy. And I'm really
right.
lucky that I went to a program where
Barely.
like we had that emphasized, you know.
Mhm.
I don't know. Anyways, thank you.
No, thank you. I mean, yeah, like I would
I'm
love to
still
hear.
mad. I'm still kind of offended over here.
and I think I think that's totally an appropriate response. I think like all of those things, like I think basically most of my life feels like this thing where it's like I have an emotional response to something somebody did, and then I think about it afterwards and like, why did I have that feeling? Or like, what was that really
Uh,
about? And not being like, I shouldn't have had that emotional response. Like that emotional response was like totally valid. And I'm like, let's do it. Let's go there. I'm upset. I'm feeling upset. It's like, okay, cool. And then it's like the next day, it's like, man, why did I get so upset about that? Like, what was the deal? And then you just kind of like well, at least I just kind of keep rolling from that. Like that's just in my life.
Yeah.
Like, just like rinse and repeat that thing over and over again.
yeah.
Um,
Ay, ay, ay.
yeah. Should we could talk
Amy?
about that for 4 more hours? Or Amy, do
I
you have
know.
something? You have another sort of like you also have a existential.
What is this week?
I know. Well, Charlie like kind of stopped me in my tracks last week. I even texted him and I said, "Can you give me like some books about this because maybe I don't know. You know that thing where you hear about stuff, but then suddenly it clicks, and maybe someone's been telling you your whole life, but you never heard it until now. Like that's how I feel about the perspective that ego is like, am I good enough? Rather than like, I'm so good. And I know I'm so good is rooted in like worthlessness or like self-worth questioning.
Mm,
But I hadn't considered that it could be like non-toxic, I guess, is like I always was like, oh well, so egotistical because they don't actually like have a sense of self-assuredness and like they're not coming from a genuine place. But then I hadn't thought about the oh, I'm coming from a genuine place, but I'm wondering, am I good enough type of thing being ego. Anyways, all this to say I had a gig yesterday. And it was fun. It was like a last minute call. I was very excited to be free because it was just um American Songbook with trio and it was at a fancy hotel and they sort of had like a jazz club vibe in there. I think they actually call it a jazz club. That's how it was like set up. Um, but I was thinking about ego because the first song I got up there and my ego was literally the size of me. I was like, does this sound good? Do they hate me? I can see all four people in the audience and they're just looking at me with like straight faces. And and the sound is great, so I can really hear myself. Do I sound good? And it was not like who knows how it sounded. It probably sounded like normal Amy, but in my brain, I was like, this sounds so bad. I can hear it all. And then though we took a break. This is kind of bad, but like I had like one drink in the middle of the set and it kind of like loosened me up a little. And I was like, this is great. This is so fun. I'm wearing like this new dress I bought and I love jazz and like this sounds swinging. Like this is awesome. And then actually like the pianist pulled me out of it because he played something where I was like moved and then I sang. And then at the end of the gig, I was like, oh, wow. So that went away. But all this to say, again, I just feel like by the end of it, I had kind of like sized it down a bit. Like my ego was for sure smaller because I wasn't making any choices that were like is this a good choice? Should I make this choice? Like it
Mm.
felt much more inspired slash I had stopped thinking. My brain left the chat and it was just the rest of me, which was really, it's like such a cool feeling and hard to, I don't know how I did it. I think I probably just got more used to being up there or something. Like it wasn't like I somehow switched off my brain or something, but
Mm.
I'm glad because I was really freaked out too at the beginning. Because once I was thinking about my ego, then I was like, stop. Why are you doing that?
No. I think that also just comes
So
with the territory of being like a jazz musician. Like you're in a new air like space. Most like maybe like 55% of the time you're playing with people that you've probably never played with before. And you're
yeah,
thinking,
two new people I'd never met.
yeah, so you're probably thinking, oh my gosh, like they don't know who I am. Like I don't know who they are. Are we gonna make good music? What's gonna happen? You know, all that
Yeah.
stuff. And then after you've like, oh, haha, I'm doing it. You know,
Yeah.
I think
Yeah. Yeah.
that
Yeah.
it always like takes a hot minute to like get into the groove of things. I hate saying that, but
No, but it's like getting up to water ski or something. You're making me think about where you get up and you're like, "Ugh," and
yeah,
then you're like, oh, this is fun. That's how it felt.
yeah,
I did also have
yeah.
that mindset at the beginning where I was like, I'm in New York City. Like, what am I doing?
New York City.
Monster Mash.
Monster man. Oh my god, she's back in the city. The I was thinking like yeah, the book that I forgot to recommend to you is the effortless mastery thing, like the Kenny Werner thing. And
Mm.
he has a new book out too. I don't know, have you two read that book or checked out Effortless Mastery, the first book ever?
Yeah, I haven't checked out the second book, but he does seminars at Berkeley, so I try to go to those sometimes, and they're very nice.
But he talks about this a lot,
I listened to
you
him
know.
speak a bit, but I haven't actually read the book, but I know of it. It's been in my circle.
Yeah. Yeah, I
I
kind
gotta
of want
read
to check
it.
out this new book. The one thing that I heard him talking about most recently with this idea that like there's like a step zero. Like he has like four steps in the book basically to like get to like the place. And it's like step zero is just like I think just to notice your breath. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
because you just do that all the time. And so if you can do that, that's like a way to get into this, what he calls the space, which is the flow state or to disconnect from your ego, for your brain to leave the chat, whatever, whatever you want to call it. It's all kind of similar stuff,
That's
but that's
Yeah.
cool.
cool.
Then I feel like though I would be so well, I'll just read the book. I feel like I'd be like, my breath,
Yeah.
it's not supported.
Yeah.
My mouth, it's parched. No, but that's like fair. That's like checking. That's how people like start meditating too,
Yeah.
which
That's
is
very
seems like
common.
this same thing or like a similar thing.
It's funny. It reminds you too of like talking about breathing in voice lessons. Like there are some voice teachers that like, oh, I only talk about breath, or I start every semester, every year, every whatever talking about breath. Like it's the main thing. And then there's some teachers that, like don't talk about it at all. I've tried both. I've tried kind of like both vibes. I don't really talk about it that much anymore. Like I'll kind of just like give some basic prompts sometimes, but I found that like the more I talked about breathing, the more people breathed really weird. Like
Ah,
Mm.
they would like you know like before they sang or something, and I was like, "Well, what are you doing?" And they're like, "I'm just trying to get like I'm trying to expand. I'm trying to breathe low diaphragmatically and like keep my rib cage expanded as I do this
uh,
thing and all
wait,
this kind of stuff."
actually, I agree with you though, because for me it was a click. It was like a click. It wasn't, teachers said it to me the whole time. They were always saying it. I was always trying to do it. But for me, it was really like one day I was like, oh my God, I'm doing it. So it didn't even really matter if teachers said to do it because I would do exactly what you just described. I knew
Yeah.
all the words and then I would just breathe really weird.
Yeah. It's just not worth it. It's like, oh, you have all this
No.
breath and then you're
What
you're
am I
all
gonna
like
do?
messed up, like you have all this weird tension and like you hurt yourself. It's like it's
Yeah.
not worth it.
No.
I'd rather just not breathe, really. I'd rather like, we can just do other stuff, you know. Just breathe how you're breathing right now. That's fine.
Yeah.
Just take a shallow breath.
Ugh.
Um, but that's for another day. We could talk more about that. But
Yeah, that's a whole can.
my thing that I wanted to kind of I've been thinking a little bit about this week is not too deep or big, but there's been like a lot of talk about like this Ticketmaster, Live
Mm,
Nation, Taylor Swift, dealing with the Taylor Swift tickets and all that kind of stuff. And
Mhm.
um, I had like a run in with Live Nation back when I was like in Minnesota. Like I had booked this gig and we were like opening for this semi-famous like guitarist, singer, songwriter person who I will like not name names, but um it turns out that they had like a very high profile guest artist person that was going to be playing with them like as a surprise for that show. And
mm,
so like
Oh,
that person I guess decided that they didn't want anybody else to be on stage, or like they didn't want any opener, they didn't want any of that kind of stuff. So like the day of the show I got a call from like the booker at the club, and they were like, "Oh yeah, like this happened, like you're canceled or whatever." And so I tweeted about it, and then
mm.
the local radio station like retweeted it, and they started like talking about it on air. They're like, "Oh, I guess so and so, blah blah blah, is like this thing happened and all this kind of stuff." And then
Oh
I
my
started
gosh.
getting these phone calls from this publicist that was like, if you don't take that tweet down and get everyone else who retweeted it to take it down or whatever, like you're never
what?
gonna work again. And
Oh my
like
gosh.
just like and they called me like every minute for 3 hours. Like I saw this number that I didn't know and I didn't pick it up, and they would leave these like just brutalistic like voicemails
Oh
and
my
text messages
gosh.
and stuff. And I was like, I'm like not dealing with that. I'm like, I'm not playing the show. Like, I don't know. Like, I'm not doing the thing. But it was this like big Live Nation kind of like rigmarole thing. And so like, I don't know.
Oh,
I just am like, that was years ago, but
the
there's this
Charlie
deal where it's like
Chronicles.
there was this article in the New York Times I read today. There's been a bunch of stuff that's been written about it, but there's this opinion article that's basically like the government should break up Ticketmaster and Live Nation. Like Ticketmaster
Mm,
acquired Live Nation or the other way
yeah.
around,
It's just a
and
monopoly, right?
yeah, and it's a
On all
monopoly, and like
tickets.
they basically agreed to this like merger or sale based on like Ticketmaster like promising that they weren't going to do all this like predatory stuff, and that they weren't going to like monopolize it, and that they were going to allow their software to be used by other companies and all this kind of stuff, none of which they basically have done. So
Mm.
um and so like part of what people are saying is like why all this kind of stuff is going down with Taylor Swift is that, and those tickets, is because they've had no motivation, like with like a basically a free market, because it's a monopoly. They've had no motivation to like invest in their technology and to like figure out their systems, and they spend a lot of their time just fighting bots that are trying to like buy tickets. So for
Oh,
like
and resell
normal
Oh
them?
my
people,
gosh.
when you're trying to buy a ticket through Ticketmaster, it's like 47 steps to do a
Yeah.
thing, just because it's like trying to like authenticate you as like a real person.
Interesting.
So, and there's a number of other problems, and like people like Pearl Jam and other bands and stuff have like specifically tried to do shows where like they don't work with Ticketmaster or Live Nation, like they just go to clubs that aren't affiliated with one of those two companies, and that is like shockingly difficult and hard to do in the
Wow.
Oh my
United
gosh.
States. Um, so, anyways, that's kind of like what I've been thinking about, and it's annoying. And Ticketmaster and stuff is not the only, it's not the only example of this sort of thing. But obviously, it's like probably the thing that's most affect. Like if it was just, I mean, Spotify, like for streaming stuff, like Spotify is like kind of not great for musicians. But like if there weren't Apple Music and some of these other options
Yeah.
like you know YouTube and Amazon Music and all that kind of stuff. If it was just Spotify, I can't imagine it would be better for musicians.
Yeah. It'd be
Yeah.
absolutely worse.
So does Ticketmaster take a cut? Like, are they they and the venue talk and then the artist and the venue talk, or like how does that even does the venue I'm confused.
It's like the same company. So it's like it's basically like, oh, you want to play I have a student that works at the Hard Rock Cafe or something in Boston, and it's like that's owned by Live Nation, and so like you want to buy tickets to go there, you go through the Ticketmaster website, and
Oh
it's all.
wow.
I do think probably like the venue gets a cut, Ticketmaster gets a cut. I mean, there's like a lot of
Yeah.
like there's a lot of people uh taking a spoon out of that buffet line or something
Yeah,
basically.
right.
Yeah. But there's been all
That's
this gnarly
insane.
stuff where like there's all these resellers and everything, and I think there's been examples where Ticketmaster has actually been like caught like reselling their own tickets, like marking up and reselling
No.
tickets. There's a really famous like Justin Bieber example too, where Justin Bieber's camp, like his people, actually bought tickets for one of his shows and then resold them like they got the tickets at whatever their rate was,
Oh, I
and
feel
then
like I heard about that.
they like upsold them and like resold them for like 200% of like what they bought them as, and like Justin Bieber just took that money or something, and like Ticketmaster was just kind of like, okay, yeah, I don't know, like I think they knew about
What?
it and didn't really do anything.
Why do we need Ticketmaster is my question. Can't the venues just like the artist decides the price? Oh, but that wouldn't work, would it?
Mm,
But it's like, how do you buy tickets and how does it
yeah,
all get authenticated and all that kind of stuff? I mean, there have been other systems and they've just kind of been like
not as
partly because
popular.
of the Live Nation thing, because like I don't know what percentage, but a huge percentage of especially large venues that would like do a lot of money gross like ticket sales, like they're owned by Live Nation, like they're owned by this company, and it's like it's not, you can't play in one of those clubs and use different like
Software.
ticket
Yeah.
software.
Okay.
They won't like allow that. That's like not part of the thing. So
Yikes.
um yeah, I think
Ay,
it's
ay,
like
ay.
it's pretty spooky.
That is spooky. Gnarly.
But
That's gnarly, Charlie.
it's gnarly,
Gnarly.
Charlie. Oh my God, she did it again. That I think we should do like a weekly segment where it's like, here we go. Here's gnarly Charlie with like some gnarly
Oh my God, a gnarly Charlie
music news.
section.
Here's the gnarly
Yes.
Charlie for this week, and it's like me being like a huge downer. Like,
I love it.
is everybody feeling pretty good about stuff? Okay, here we go. Are you ready? This is why Live Nation is the devil.
Wait,
Are
I
you
really
ready?
love this. And then you know what we should try to do is like Alex and I should try to pull you out of it, but it always doesn't work.
We fail.
You know,
Try to
like we're
cheer
like,
me up.
well, but what if they tried not using it? And you're like, won't happen. Never has, never will. I think it could be cool.
Okay, we'll work on it. We're gonna workshop that
Yeah.
offline. But should we jump into our newsletter this week?
Yeah.
Yes.
Cool. Okay, our first A this week was about the Suzuki method. Did either of you take lessons or learn about the Suzuki, like learn via the Suzuki method, like when you were younger?
No. But I remember I was so jealous of the other students that were learning Suzuki method because they got the little play box violin and I really wanted to play
Hmm.
box violin. But I got a recorder.
I took violin for 6 weeks and I sort of maybe longer, maybe probably shorter. I don't know. It was like a kick. I was like in second grade and I really wanted to play the violin. Then it really didn't sound good. But anyways, I think maybe like through that perhaps, but I've always heard about this. I mean, I feel like my father speaks of like all the things and what he thinks about them, but that's a different story. Anyways.
Yeah. So like for a quick uh whatever refresher on Suzuki method. So it's like crazy wildly popular. I think like everybody that learns string, like violin, cello, that kind of thing, I think basically most people all learn young at the Suzuki method. So people like Hilary Hahn and other folks like the basically like the famous all the famous string people now, it's like that they kind of started doing that for the most part, especially in like Western music. Um, so basically, the general idea of it, the kind of the central tenet is that it's based on language acquisition theory, and so it says that all people can and will learn from their environment, and basically it's kind of like immersion. So They very famously delay reading music until like much later than other methods.
Mm.
So the whole idea is that you're playing and you're hearing other people play, and through that, through like repetition of a lot of things that you're hearing and playing, like you get good. And like the whole idea of this was that like basically any young child could be like a protege if you kind of like followed this kind of thing. Like anybody could be a little baby Mozart is kind of the vibe. There's an article in the New Yorker this last week that was talking that was titled "What the Suzuki Method Really Taught," and so they kind of go in this article. It's really beautifully written, but it goes into the history um, of the man Suzuki and kind of like what led him to this method and but also kind of like what he was like really kind of getting at. So it says that the reduction of Suzuki to a system of music instruction misses its underlying point about human potential. So there's a new book out called Suzuki, the Man in His Dream to Teach the Children of the World. And yeah, so it was really an interesting read. And one of these pull quotes from it is that the more connections we make to music, the more significance music has. What we do know is that early exposure to art and music gives kids a longer familiarity with art and music. The sooner you start, the more you sense. It's a self-evident truth, but self-evident truths can be, for children and countries alike, essential to independence. The parents and non-parents may worry loudly about what the kids sawing away up on the platform are doing and where it all will get them, but the kids don't hear them. They're making music.
I love that
I love
part.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the vibe. I think like I do really think the Suzuki method is cool. Another part of this article that I thought was really fascinating was that they mentioned that for a lot of these methods, there's usually like one genius-y like figurehead person.
Yes, there is.
And it's like they kind of do their thing and they have these like really strong ideas about like what it's about. And they're like, you do this, you don't do this, you do this, you don't do this. And that through time, like those things just kind of get to be like a slogan or something. And it gets watered down. Like people just kind of put them up on it's like, here's the 4 Suzuki things or whatever. And they're just like
True,
on a
true.
poster, and it becomes like a textbook and it's like, and it just kind of gets watered down to the point where, it's kind of like you're wearing the Suzuki T-shirt, but like you're just doing all the normal bullshit that everybody else does
Oh
or
my
whatever.
gosh.
It's kind of interesting.
That says a lot about humans too, though. I think like so many humans are like, oh, that okay, then I'll do it too. But
Yeah.
then there's not the extra step of like, what do I think of this? What did they mean? What are they really trying to do here? Like, I don't know. You know what I mean?
It seems like there's this like weird pipeline for like so many different instruments. Like the like methodology pipelines, like for string instruments, it's like Suzuki method. For brass instruments, I don't know what the method is, but they all play the same freaking Bluebells of Scotland. It's a silver book. Arbans, they all use Arbans book. For wind play, like for flute players, you use Zacher, and we use oh my gosh, what am I missing? Da, 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 da. It's a half step. Well, whatever. That one. Whole
The half step
long
one.
tone. Yeah. I'm blanking on it right now. It's okay. Everything has their own methodology. And we never I sometimes I just the subtext is right at the top of the book. Do I ever read that? Like, why am I doing this exercise? Absolutely not. Does anybody read the back of the Suzuki method book to read why why they're doing it?
Well, I guess then
So,
that's why the teachers are so important too, is
yeah,
because the books can't
do
teach it
everything.
all.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
I think that one that when you said human potential, that really like struck me because
Mm.
so much of the time it's not, we think that a lot of the time it's just like, oh, I do believe that music is a gift. Like some people are like definitely musically gifted, but it doesn't mean that someone is not musically gifted. They all have the potential to be great at something. And I don't know, I guess like that, I don't know, that really struck a chord with me. Is that the right saying? Struck
Yes.
Yeah. Nice and easy.
nice and easy.
No, yeah. Well,
Yeah,
the
no,
reading
yeah.
thing too, like you think about like little babies, it's like they don't,
Aw.
like kids learn how to talk, but they, and first they babble and they like scream and like, oh, and like they're crazy. And then they start to
Yes.
say things. And they don't read until, much later, until they're in
Right.
elementary school. I remember taking trumpet lessons in elementary school and piano lessons like in elementary school, young.
Yeah.
And it's like you sit down and they just like slam the book in front of you and they're like, here's a quarter note, here's a half note. And I'm
Right.
like,
No, it makes no
I just wanted to play
sense.
the blues on the piano. That's all I wanted.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, you're never going to do that in lessons. I'm like, okay, that's great.
You're so
It
right.
checks
Yeah.
it checks out too because it doesn't mean it like I don't know. Words on a page only go so far. Like our imaginations are the things that are like creating things because of also things we've seen
Yeah.
IRL.
Yeah. The other part of this is like you talked about the text on it, like in one of these method books, and it's like, do students really even need to understand why they're doing something? Like
Mm.
Huh.
I sometimes I will get stuck in that where I'm like, this is why we're doing this, and like this is why this is important, and blah blah blah, and like I just like people's eyes glass over, and they're like, what do you
Mhm.
want me to do? And I'm like, just like open your mouth a little bit more, and they're like, okay, fine. Like, why don't you just tell me that? I was like, I was getting to that, but I was trying to like kind of confuse you between now and then. No, not really. But
No, I know what you mean. Like sometimes
It's all
maybe that could get in the way a little bit
yeah,
if a
yeah.
student is like too caught in like why or something.
yeah,
I
But
remember the
do
name of the book. It's Taffnell and Gobert. That's it.
great.
da, da, da,
Anyways.
da.
Let the record show. Alex remembered it. Okay, our next A is from Alex, and
Oh,
it's about bassist and composer Esperanza Spalding.
Esperanza.
What did
she
Esperanza Spalding do?
I love
she
her.
she departed from Harvard.
Oh,
Man,
That's a
this is such
spicy
a
meatball.
yeah.
wow. That is.
Um, I don't know about y'all, but Esperanza is like definitely seeing her evolution has been so beautiful. I don't
Mhm.
know, just seeing her coming to herself. Anyways, bassist, singer, composer, and opera librettist. Yeah, she wrote an opera with Wayne Shorter. Oh,
Oh my
uh,
goodness, I did not know that.
yeah. Mm, There. Oh, it's so
Hello?
good. Anyway, she wrote an email that she has communicated with Harvard over many months about a proposal for a decolonial education curriculum entitled BADAP, which is Black Artists Education. Oh, Black Artist Educators Decolonizing and Placemaking Model, which she wanted to make like a course or initiative, and Harvard just wasn't ready for it yet. Um, this course or initiative, she says it works to devolve portions of colonial institutions' holdings, and through doing so, help heal their impact on and relationships to communities of color. Under the BADAP model, Harvard would rematriate, which is, I had to look up this word because it's not a real word. It's, it actually, I'll come back to it. Harvard would rematriate some of its land and buildings, offer them as spaces where Black and Native artists, scholars, students, activists, and cultural workers, as well as the broader Harvard and surrounding community, could collaborate and make art. So I was like, wow, she's hitting all of the points.
Jeez.
Like she's hitting um like Harvard reinvesting some of their endowment. Like Harvard is one of the most heavily endowed institutions in the world. Like their endowment's pretty sizable. Um, and so she's talking about like giving back for Harvard to give back to some of their communities of color as well as the community around them that, supports what they're doing. And this word rematriate, it's not a real word. The real word is repatriate, which I learned is like a legal term, which means to give back. Um, and I don't, the only reason why I know this is because one of my friends did his master's thesis on this thing called patria, but that means like you're like the land of where you come from, so like your hometown. But in the Spanish language, they don't have motherland, which is what we usually talk about. And so he made up this word. Well, he didn't make it up. This is like a lineage of things, but it's called matria, which actually means motherland. So she's not only hitting on, oh, rematriate as in like they should give back, but they should also recognize the femininity within our world and within land and all of these things. So she realized the intersectionality of not only being in communities of color, but also being a part of this greater world and also recognizing the femininity within it, which is like, I think so cool. I think it's a blow for Harvard, but I think it is a little bit too progressive for them right now. I think it would have asked a lot for them. So I think if over the next few years, she wants to keep the conversation going with them because if a place like Harvard is able to do something like that, which is to divest and like to reinvest in into their student body, essentially, like offering some of its buildings as safe spaces for these artists and scholars and activists to work. I think then it will set the stage for many other institutions to follow.
Yeah.
Yeah, which Harvard does a lot. It's kind of like setting the tone. I just
Yeah.
looked up the endowment. So endowment right now for Harvard is $50.9 billion.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
It's pretty gnarly.
Oh.
Right?
Yeah.
All it takes is like one person too. That's how anything happens. Not one person, like one entity, I guess is what I mean. Anything big happens when somebody does something first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Harvard.
I think maybe another component of this for Spalding is that like, if you're at a place and like your energy isn't going towards the things you want it to go towards, it's like, it does suck for Harvard that Esperanza Spalding isn't there anymore, but it also is kind of like, okay, well, I'm going to put my energy and time
Mhm.
into the other things. It's like if that's
Yeah.
cool, if you're, and I don't know, I don't have a sense of like how what the terms of like this departure are for everybody. You know what I mean? Like, are they leaving on good terms or it's complicated or whatever? But um, it's kind of like, well, if you're not if I can't do this kind of work that I'm really interested in doing here, like that's cool. And even though it is Harvard, I think it's like a
Yeah.
baller thing for her to do, to just say like, even though this is Harvard and everything, it's like this is something I want to do, and so I'm going to go find places and opportunities to do
Yeah.
this work.
I think she is talking about starting something like this in Portland because I think she recently moved back there.
Yeah, that the
Um,
article says that.
and so I think I don't know. I think you're right. Like I think that's like to be so strong in your values and what you want to spend your energy on to depart from someplace like Harvard and be like, peace, like this is what I really want to do. I think that also takes like a strong sense of who you are and values and how you want to expend your energy, like you said.
Definitely.
And Harvard has to be like such a small piece of her pie. Whatever she was
Yeah.
doing there, whatever, I don't think it's like.
Yeah.
But
But
actually, I hope they paid okay.
I'm sure. But yeah, I think she like the language that she uses, like I don't know, I just learned a lot just from like
Yeah.
the email that she sent. It didn't sound like condemnatory at all, or it kind of like introduced this new thing that people probably weren't even thinking about, like BADAP. What is this?
Mhm.
Decolonizing curriculum, decolonizing like or like talking about divest like reinvest rematriating. That's not,
Yeah.
I don't know, to get people familiar with a lot of these terms and to create the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Totally. Yeah. No, that's true. I totally agree with that too. Yeah, that's like a huge deal. Probably, and then so like you start to get some like media coverage about this, and it's like, in some ways that could be just as effective as having Harvard do the thing you want them to do.
Right.
It's like,
Mhm.
oh, we start this
Yeah.
conversation, and um but yeah, it's great. Esperanza Spalding is a
She's
genius,
great.
as far as
Yeah.
I'm concerned. Um, cool. Can we move on to the
Yeah,
next
the
day?
last day.
So our last day is standard deviation. We've been talking about standards. So it's funny when I was like when I was kind of like trying to link back to other things that we've talked about in terms of this like third A, and it was like, well, we wrote about this here and here, and we talked about and we talked about it in this podcast and in this podcast. We were talking about a lot about standards. It's almost like we all went to jazz school, but but jazz critic Nate Chinen recently weighed in on some of the things that have kind of been in the up in the ether in regards to standards recently. Nate Chinen has a really cool Substack blog called The Gig that I recommend people subscribe to. It's free and it's very cool. He's a great writer, and all of his books are I think are quite smart. But he weighed in on new strategies being taken by Terry Lynn Carrington and Shai Maestro and others to bring both more equity to jazz songbooks and in the case of Maestro to learn standards more deeply. That's what that we talked about last week. Um, and it's kind of interesting because we had a lot of different feelings about the Shai Maestro list. I think we were all kind of were like, this is cool, but it's also kind of like makes me think like maybe I'm, like how does this all fit in our lives?
Yeah.
Basically, like
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
it's kind of like when someone's like, well, I think you should get up every day at 4 a.m. and like run 5 miles, and then you
Oh
should
my
only
God.
eat like nuts and berries until 5 p.m. And then at that time, you should drink some water and have like some protein, and then you should go to
Literally,
sleep.
yes.
And it's
Yeah.
kind of like, okay, I'm sure that's like some sort of like what like a AI robot or something would like pump out is like the way to optimize my cells or something. But it's like
Yeah.
I don't know if that's like really what I want my life to be. Um,
Optimize
I heard so.
myself.
I'm like I'm very anti-smoking, but there's this one joke where it's like, if you stop smoking, you'll like live longer, and the person says, "Will I live longer, or will it just like feel like it's longer?" And it's like,
Oh my
Oh my gosh.
gosh.
but anyways, so what's interesting about this is Chinen calls Maestro's approach to or Mastro's. I feel like I want to say
Maestro.
maestro because it's just like the
Yeah.
Yeah.
conductor kind of thing. But
Maestro.
if I'm mispronouncing that, someone please check me. But Chinden calls his approach to playing standards extreme, while acknowledging that it touches on an idea or two that I've heard again and again from the masters. Then he goes on to say, when Sonny Rollins talks about the old songs, he often refers to the lyrics. Lee Konitz used to go so far as to sing them. Earlier this year, when Chinnen spoke to John Schofield about this first ever solo album, he recited most of It Could Happen to You as a way of understanding the tune. And this kind of matched some of my feelings about it too. My initial reactions was like, oh, okay, yeah, this is not like a super super new thing. I don't think Shai
Yeah.
Maestro is also saying like I've invented this new
Yeah.
thing, but I think he's just saying like this is what I tell my students to do. So it's important not to maybe mischaracterize that as like it's not trying to scoop anything, but yeah, this comes from a lot of this other stuff, especially like learning lyrics and especially for like instrumentalists and all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. But I think there's plenty of vocalists that maybe sing the lyrics but don't really kind of like haven't really thought about them. It's like funny how like students sometimes I'll get to like the end of the semester and be like, what do you think this song is about? And they're like, I don't know, it's like about love or whatever. I'm like,
Oh
okay,
my
cool.
gosh.
I'm like, they're all about
Love that.
love, but it's like, but what's like like, are you imagining something? Like, do you have like, I have very like a visual, like I create like a little, it's a lot of times it's just like almost like a like a slow-mo sort of like movie scene in my head or something. I what do either of you do that at all for like song lyrics?
I definitely I feel like sometimes I there's definitely like a dropping in thing. Like I definitely had a moment where I was like, wait a second, I can invest in this. Either I think of something specific in my life, or it's very kind of like it feels like I'm acting. It's like movie-esque or something like that. Like I not necessarily with like, and my partner in this scene is named John. Like it's not like that, but
Yeah.
it's like yeah, but I don't
Um,
know if I necessarily have the visual, but I do have like this type of thing, like a five senses thing, perhaps.
mm, I think with lyrics, I definitely draw like definitely with Amy in the I relate it to something like a situation that I experienced in real life. And then it's actually with instrumental music that I can fully like have a movie going on in my head. Like if you see my
Mm.
annotations on my flute music, like with each movement, I would have the subtext at the top and be like, what? For each movement, I have like a little story
Wow.
that I see and I imagine whenever I'm playing that. So I played, it even I play more musically, but yeah.
That's interesting because with instrumental music for me, I don't really like make a story. It's like much more like feeling for me. It's like
Mm,
something that I don't know what it is. I don't know if I could put into words. There's something, but I don't know if I could actually put into words what that is when I'm singing
interesting.
something instrumental.
Yeah, I think like well, and to be clear for me, it's like all I think it's like all of the above, like all everything you
Mm.
have all said. It's like a mixture of all that kind of stuff. I think that like even yeah, I don't know. I think I'm like a very visual like imaginer or something like that. I think like I think I
Mhm.
can go there with vibes, but like if I'm really honestly like trying to like be in the space, it is pretty visual in my brain
Mm.
you know but there's levels like an initial thing could just be kind of like yeah more vibes like I want this to be like it's kind of sad or whatever, it's slow and sad, which is like all my music,
Oh my
but
God,
then
I
if I
love.
go another layer, then it's like it's slow and sad, but we're like there's wind and the trees are this color or something.
I
I don't
love
know.
that. That's cool.
Yeah,
That's
or if it's like your own tune, do you go back to the moments that you were writing that tune? Or like what you were
sometimes.
envisioning while you were writing that tune?
I actually
Yeah.
one time laughed at myself. I there was a like a moment where I laughed at a lyric because I was like, did I really feel that way? No,
Yes, you
definitely
did,
though.
Amy. You felt
Yes,
that.
I
You wrote it
did.
down. You sang about it.
We were talking about that, like remembering your past self or having empathy or like or compassion for your past self.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh.
I mean, I think like it changes for me. So I think like I have the experience of writing it, and I often have like a pretty clear idea of like what it's about or like what I'm
Mm,
seeing. But then when I go back and sing it again, it's like it oftentimes can be like kind of different, like it
gotcha.
can be a different scenario. Because I think also too, it's like a lot of times it's like wrapped up in like what's kind of more current happening in my
Right.
life.
Mhm.
Like someday the two of you will experience this thing where like will sing a song that you wrote like 10 years ago,
Ah,
like or 15 years ago or whatever that is, like I legitimately have songs I wrote like 25 years ago or something. It's like it's insanity. And
wow.
so it's like I'm not going back to like 22-year-old Charlie who's like whatever, like sitting in his crappy apartment in Harlem, like just being upset because like the whatever this one girl who I've never talked to, she doesn't like love me or something. And it's like that's not like I don't I'm not just gonna
Yeah.
like I'm not just gonna click and go back and be that person or something. So it's like
Mm,
I'm just me, and so I have probably reasons to feel those things, or it's kind of more of like a memory, but it's quite hazy or something. I don't know.
Do you ever like also though buy well maybe this is not for originals then, but like I was singing a song of Avery's and I like bought in. I was like, oh my God, this has happened to me. And like it fully has not happened to me at all. But I was able to kind of take the song and be like, I guess that is acting, where it's like an imagined circumstance, but you make it like sort of real in that moment. But I fully was like, I finished singing the song and I was like, oh my God, that was
Yeah.
so hard for me. And it didn't happen at all.
I think acting is a strange term because it's like it kind of is almost like a. And I totally know what you mean. I think it is that.
Yeah.
Like it is this like imagined thing, or it's um yeah, it's like you're just creating a thing that doesn't exist,
But
or
it's
at least for
based in
you. It's like
truth, though, I think. Is that what you're trying to, is that what
yeah,
you're
it's like
getting
based in
at?
truth. I think like well, and acting is supposed to be right too. I'm just not an
Yeah.
actor, and so I've never called myself an actor or thought about acting, and so it's like
Yeah.
that almost kind of feels like oh, you're just acting a certain way or something. It's like, it
No,
feels
yeah,
more
I
like
know what you
that than it does
mean.
like
Yeah.
the than what I totally feel too, which is just like you kind of imagine this thing. Like yeah, when I sing songs, like I can even go to a place where I'm like, oh, I haven't ever experienced that. I don't know if I've ever really felt that. And I feel like I can sing that because like I can kind of
Mm,
imagine it, or
Mhm.
it's like I've seen
gotcha.
it in a
Yeah.
movie or someone has told me about it or whatever, told me a story or something. And it's like, yeah, I can go there. I don't know that that's even that vastly different than my own experiences, like my memory of my own experiences. You know what I
Mm,
mean?
yeah.
Mm.
It's
Yeah, I
almost kind of like
do.
Inside Out, that Pixar movie.
Yeah.
I don't know
Yeah.
if
I
you've seen
love
it.
Yeah.
Inside Out so
Yeah.
much.
Yes.
And it's like the
Like so
memories come and they're
much.
like the little marbles or something. And
Yeah.
then it's like whatever you touch, like when each emotion kind of touches them or something, it kind of changes the memory.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so
Oh my God,
I
you
don't
can
know.
paint
Oh my
things
goodness.
so much. I've been doing like with college, I have been painting it. Like that's like, what is it called? Rosy retrospect.
Yeah.
That's a thing. Or like I do that the other way where I'm like, I hated that because I don't want to admit that like it's just that I was like hurt or something.
Cool.
Anyway.
Well, we digress. Let's come back to that. That was great though. So I
Yeah.
recommend
Cool.
checking out this Substack thing and all of the sources for this. Um, New music this
Music.
week.
Oh yeah.
Music.
Should I
You want
take
to
it
kick us
over?
off? Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so a friend of Foray, Isaac Romagosa, he released his debut EP. He is
Okay.
a great guitarist and composer. And on this record, he explores his Catalonian heritage. He's very proud of that. Through his integration of flamenco rhythms, Messiaen-like melodies, and jazz harmony. So, like, his whole thing is like, how can I make this really crazy melody sound extremely beautiful with this like basis of like flamenco rhythms, which is like I think it's like a 12/8 or 6/8 thing going on, but he like changes meters and all this stuff, which I think it's beautiful. And it's truly like a global album because it includes people from like Spain, Cuba, America. So he like takes it all over, and that's been just a joy to listen to. Um, I loved it. And then um, the new EP from Brooklyn-based artist, producer, and songwriter Cautious Clay, Thin Ice on the Cake. It toys with the meta surrealism of life and death found in. I thought this was so hip. Surrealism of life and death found in birthdays and the power of accepting the things we cannot control in life. I was just like, how does one think about that when you think about your birthday? I'm just like, oh yeah, haha, I'm gonna have cake and I'm gonna sing happy birthday to you. And he's like, this is like a meta like life thing where like you can't help it's kind of calm and like you're
Oh
living
my
but you're also
God.
dying at the same time.
I
Anyways,
can't spend too much time in that realm.
yeah, it's crazy. Um,
I really can't. I used to not be able to fathom it, and now I can kinda, and I don't want to.
That's fair. That's your choice, Amy.
he
Thank you.
says he goes on to say birthdays are also about celebrating the positives and joys of life. So like there's like some joy in that. Like he says the cake is celebratory, of life and to circle and blah blah blah. I just not blah blah blah. It's really important things. It's not blah
And
blah
blah,
blah.
blah, blah, blah,
Blah.
No, but
blah.
I get it.
Anyways, it's
Listen to our
also
podcast. Yeah.
Blah blah blah. Our
Cautious
podcast. Blah blah
Clay
blah.
is a fantastic songwriter, so I should check. Everyone should check it out. It's vibes, vibe central.
I like
I like the
vibes.
name. Thin ice on the cake.
Don't go
Thin
walking out
ice.
on the
I
cake.
love that saying. You're on thin ice.
More vibes from the last new music this week is from Ways Blood. So I did not know this artist before this last week. Natalie Merrings
Mm.
is the name of the person, but the project is called Ways Blood. Pitchfork gave it an 8.4, which is like a really high score for Pitchfork. But the new album is called And in the Darkness, Hearts Aglow. It's very like Joni Mitchell-y. They say the Guardian called Merring's voice preternaturally wonderful and a 21st century take on the Laurel Canyon folk pop indie folk. Let me start that over. Laurel Canyon folk pop idiom of the 1960s, both an awe-striking thing of beauty and a comforting balm. But yeah, it's very cool. It's very vibey. It's very Joni Mitchell-y kind of vibe. That's like the Laurel Canyon kind of callback, but it's cool. I dig it. And there was another new music thing this week that I didn't put in here because I'm saving it for next week, but there's a new Phoebe Bridgers holiday EP that is like just perfect. Basically, it's like
Oh my
like
gosh.
if you wanted if you're a Phoebe Bridgers fan and you're like, oh, I just wish she would do like a kind of sad Christmas album. It's like she did it, and it's great. And I'm pretty sure Andrew Bird is on it, like playing violin and like whistling and stuff too. It's very cool. I actually like it better than her last album.
Oh wow.
Just like sonically, just like it's more kind of acousticy and less kind of like, I don't know, pop rocky or something.
Tune in next week to hear.
Yeah, tune in next week where we do 1,000 of our favorite Christmas Christmas albums, our 4 for Foray. I started putting my list together for next week, and it's already like at 15 albums. I know I'm only supposed to. We're each going to do our top 10, but I'm like,
I love that.
I'm just putting all of them in there, and then
bonus.
Then I thought we could like.
You gotta leave some
argue.
for us.
Yeah, I know we could argue over some of the. If someone wants to borrow some or take some, that's totally fine. But yeah, that was new music this week. It was a really great week for new music, and like a lot of them have been. And actually, full disclosure, I contributed to the campaign, the what's it called, Kickstarter campaign from the first album From Now On.
Oh yeah,
Barbosa.
same.
I'm a fan. So check that out. Our extra credit was a meme.
So
where it's we've probably, some of us have seen this meme where there's like one child who like the parent is like, it's a pool, and there's like one child where the parent is like holding or like about to like, taking care of the one child, and then there's a child next to the parent that's like basically kind of drowning, and then there's like a cut, and then there's like a skeleton on the bottom on the bottom of the ocean or whatever. And it's been a bunch of different kind of things, but the parent in this meme is a very visual gag that we're doing. But the parent in this meme it says schools is the parent, and then the parent is helping out. Schools are helping out students who memorize everything, and meanwhile, the critical thinkers and problem solvers are kind of drowning, and then the creatives are like down in the pool as like a dead skeleton in the bottom of the ocean.
I love it.
Accurate.
So I felt that one deep in my bones.
Yeah.
Yes.
But yeah, I think that's that was a newsletter this week. Amy, do you want to read us out?
That I do. Thank you for listening, everybody, and supporting Foray Music. Please remember to like and subscribe. And just a note that if you leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, it helps us out a lot. And we'd love to read and highlight your comments on next week's show. For more, follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at Foray Music. Subscribe to our newsletter at foraymusic.substack.com and check out our website at foraymusic.com.
And Alex, what's our
Mm.
quote for this week?
Our quote is, "Easy does it." John Legend.
John Legend. We always
Yes,
think it's funny.
John.
I've been editing these podcasts, and it's like every week we laugh at the same kind of like dumb joke that we're like, John Legend said this. And it's like,
Because she pauses. It's so great. She pauses and you're like, "Aw."
Delivery.
Yeah.
John
And then she
Legend.
goes, "You know who said that?" That's what the pause says. I think it's funny. It never gets old.
Okay, this is probably going up on. We're probably just missing most of you for Thanksgiving. This is probably going up on Black Friday. So we hope you all had a great Thanksgiving and enjoy your
Yes.
Black Friday. Please maybe get outside or listen to some good
Yes.
music on Black Friday, and don't push anybody over to, I don't know, buy that. Don't start any fights over the Foray music merch or anything. It's
Yeah, guys. I've been wearing it.
We'll see you next week where we're going to talk about holiday albums. Until then, we think you're super. Bye.
Bye.